All right. What's up, everybody? This is the Friday morning kickoff of the Tesla Beat. We are just going to be catching up on Tesla news every Friday at 8 a.m. This week, we have a couple of special guests who we're going to introduce in a moment. There's a couple of people that typically will be on the show that couldn't make it this week. Shout out to Amy and Jeff. But we really appreciate you tuning in and really just following along the journey. Again, our goal is to kind of catch you up if you're not able to, stay up to date on all the Tesla news. So our special guests this week are going to be Matthew Dr. or at Matthew Dr. He can tell you all things about the Cybertruck, and then obviously we're going to get brighter with Herbert, who really keeps a daily, weekly, quarterly, and really a whole milestone sheet. So. And we have Eli Burton, who runs My Tesla Adventure, aka also to the Adventures of Starman. So let me bring in a regular here as well. Joe, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, I'm Joe, San Joaquin Valley Tesla Owners Club president. Glad to be here. It's good to talk with everybody.
Yeah, thanks for joining, and thanks for being able to make time available every Friday at 8 a.m. So thanks for joining the Tesla Beat. Let's get Eli. What's up, dude?
What's up, John? Good being here, guys.
Thanks for joining. We have Herbert as well.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much, John.
And then we have Matthew Dr. How's it going?
Yeah, good morning, everybody.
Yeah, no, I think what I love about this, what I love about doing these live streams is being able to just meet people that you may not always talk to. And, even talking with people like Matthew, who are just completely focused on the Cybertruck and all things Cybertruck. And it feels like, I live, I think, 25 minutes away from where all these sightings are happening, but just with a young family, it's hard to get out. So thankfully I can live it partially through Ryan at the Kilowatts. But I thought maybe what we could do before we get into kind of more of the weekly news is we could just get into really all of these sightings that we're seeing and get Matthew's take. He was able to actually attend in person. He was able to attend the investor day in person. And so he's been kind of following it very closely. So I would love to just get his take, but let me just show a couple of quick images here. So let's just, here's again, Kilowatts at it. This is just making a U-turn here as he's following it in his Model Y. We also see, I think there's another screenshot here along with this. There was also a video I can't find right now where the Cybertruck, I believe it was Kilowatts who recorded it. It was doing the wiggle. So it was like going back and forth. But it just seems like the Cybertruck is more imminent than ever. And one interesting thing is, okay, I don't live in Austin, so I can't say, but we're seeing it all over Palo Alto. I mean, obviously the engineering headquarters is here, but as much as the production is happening in Austin, it just seems like they're everywhere in Palo Alto right now. So, but yeah, I thought I would level set on that. But Matthew, I don't know if you want to kick us off, and then we can kind of go into everyone's perspective on what they think about the Cybertruck this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. This time kind of reminds me when the Model Y was coming out and we started seeing Model Y pre-release betas showing up all over the place and at superchargers. And I think we're at the very early start of that. We're seeing the Cybertruck out and about a lot more. And I imagine we're going to start seeing it at superchargers up and down the West Coast and, all over Texas. So I think we can be excited for that. When I was, watching these videos, I saw how tight the turning radius was, on this big full-size truck. So, I had, posted the Kilowatts video and, mentioned to Elon, it looks like this is going to have a turning radius like the Model Y. And, he responded saying it could even be tighter than the Model Y, which would be incredible.
Insane.
Yeah. I was telling Herbert, I have a very, very steep driveway, short turnaround area. I've got, a few vehicles and a full-size truck, and it will definitely make my life a lot easier. And it's been a while since we've seen, four-wheel steering on a production vehicle. GM had their quadra steer on their, full size, their half-ton trucks like the Silverado and the GMC 1500 and the Yukon and the Suburban. But I think they discontinued it like 20 years ago. And about a decade before that, Honda had it on their Prelude. So yeah, I'm really excited to see it come to the Cybertruck. The cool thing about four-wheel steering, it's not just that the front axle and the rear axle will be kind of opposites each other. They can also be the same. So what that means is if you want to parallel park, you can kind of slide diagonally into a spot. Or if you're on the freeway at, a higher speed, both wheels will turn, both axles will turn the same direction, and you can change lanes, like just essentially slide straight over without having to turn the car. So that's super exciting. I can't wait to get one. Hopefully we'll start to see deliveries in, the next couple of quarters.
Yeah, definitely. Did anyone else want to jump in on their thoughts? Eli, Herbert?
I actually want to jump in with a question for Matthew. Matthew, you've been following its rollout very closely. What do you think its off-road potential is going to be?
Yeah, so I talked to the Cybertruck team at Giga Austin about this, and they are very confident that this will outperform the F-150 Raptor off-road. So when I, that's the vehicle I have right now, and it's, it's very highly capable off-road vehicle. So I was specifically asking about, the ability for the protection of the battery. If you're off-roading, you're going to bottom out the truck every now and then. So the protection of the battery, the suspension, the large sidewall on the tires. The suspension was the thing that shocked me the most. I knew the battery would be protected. If you guys remember a decade ago when the Model S first came out, the battery was not as well protected as it is today. But that was an easy thing for Tesla to solve. But this vehicle will have air suspension. It's got these huge, massive pneumatic tanks for the air suspension. And it looks almost like a giant shock. And so when I was on site, I was with Sandy Monroe, and I was asking him about it. And he said the only vehicle he's seen with a air suspension almost that big are the Ram trucks that have air suspension. But he said this is bigger. This is the biggest automotive air suspension tank he's ever seen. So I talked to So I talked to the Cybertruck team, and they're telling me that they want to race this in Baja. And I said, well, are you going to offer, a shock and spring suspension option? Because how are you going to jump a vehicle with air suspension? Won't the tank explode when you land with that kind of force? And they said, no, they said they've tested it. They said they've jumped this truck.
Wow.
So just a little caveat. If you have an off-road truck like a Ford Raptor and you take it off-road, and not that you're going off jumps, but you're going on, high speed off-road, and there's a lot of movement in your suspension does wear out very fast, like 10,000 miles. You have to replace it if you're driving like that. So don't expect to be able to use this truck like a Baja race truck and have the suspension last forever. On my previous Raptors, I would have to replace the suspension about every 100,000 miles. So, I would imagine the suspension would be similar if you're driving it, in mud and snow and bumping it a good bit. But if you're just driving it on the street, you're not going to have to worry about that.
I was really concerned because I have a lot of Costco runs and Safeway. So I really need that suspension in my Cybertruck. So I can't wait.
Yeah. No, I'm in a Ford Raptor group, and everyone kind of jokes about just doing their Costco or their Starbucks runs, in their mall crawler, because that's what 99.9% of the users are going to do.
Yeah.
It's kind of like tracking a car. You often hear people detracting, saying like, oh, the Model 3 Performance is not going to beat a M3 around a track, so that's a better car. And it's like, well, find me an owner of one of those cars that's been on a track in the last 12 months. There's not too many.
Matthew, one quick question, since you own a Ford Raptor, what's the maintenance like, right? How are you seeing the maintenance of because that's the thing about these Ford Raptors. These things are like $90,000 by the time you get it's all said and done, right? But what's the maintenance look like? Because ultimately, I remember with the Model X, the biggest thing that was difference versus a Range Rover, which obviously is the highest end Land Rover, and even these Mercedes SUVs, BMWs X5s, the X7, is that I don't have to pay for maintenance. I mean, sure, there's things that come up like windshield wiper fluid and everything else, but what is going to be the, potential, the cost of ownership for a Cybertruck versus the Ford Raptor?
Yeah. So during, your initial, if you buy a Raptor brand new, you're not going to have to worry about most maintenance until, 40, 50,000 miles. But, my Raptor, close to 100,000 miles, I've had to replace the four-wheel drive module. I've had to replace a bunch of the emissions items. I had to replace the suspension, which again, that's a wear item. So not too worried about that. I've had window switches break on it. It's really common for the third brake light, like the brake light in the middle of the truck, to leak for water to get in. That's a super common one. With the previous generation Raptors, the cam phasers on the turbocharged V6 typically went out and needed to be replaced. So there's a ton of maintenance. For the Raptor, I think you're going to have to, probably replace the suspension around 100,000 miles, but there's not going to be much beyond that. You mentioned Range Rover. So my wife used to drive, Range Rover Sports, and everyone we had to replace the suspension on. We had to replace the upper lower control arms. So, when you have a big, heavy vehicle, those parts wear out. So I wouldn't be shocked. My first generation Model X, we did have to replace the control arms, but it was under warranty. So it wasn't a cost that we had to bear.
Totally. Sorry, Joe, go. Were you going to say, or Herbert?
No, I was just going to say, I just recently replaced my control arms on the front control arms on my Model S 180,000 miles later. So.
Yeah.
That's some good value out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Matthew, isn't the biggest news that you haven't talked about yet that you discovered was the secret accessories team, that Tesla themselves is going to have their own accessories team. They're going to have a tremendous amount of accessories or other that they'll supplement the Cybertruck. So a couple of reasons why I'm excited about that, right? One is it must do something with the margin. It's going to, allow them to get more revenue through, just like that. As you know, sometimes you get more money from the add-ons than you do the actual product. But I'm curious what you think, what the kinds of accessories they could be doing. And then could this be extendable to partners? Would then, because of the way the Cybertruck is built, it seems like it's, like they're setting it up to be like allowing other people to really just plug things in. Or do you think it's going to be very similar to with the traditional trucks?
Yeah. So this was a really surprising thing to me when I met with the Cybertruck team for around an hour, basically one-on-one with them. So when they were talking about the 48-volt architecture, and I mentioned, with my truck, I always add a winch to my truck. I had, big off-road lights. Are you working with the aftermarket company so they're building compatible accessories? Because right now all of those accessories are 12-volt, and you can't just slap a converter and easily transform 48 volts to 12 volts. You need a transformer and probably an inverter each direction. So I was asking about that, and they straight up said, we are doing that in-house. I was like, what? That doesn't sound like Tesla, like building accessories and adding more parts. And they said no, they're targeting 3 different groups: the off-roaders, the campers and adventurers, and the Baja racers. And they're going to have accessories for all of those groups. So they straight up said they will offer a steel bumper. So the bumpers are, the 5-mile-an-hour compliant plastic cladding bumpers. They're going to offer steel bumpers. They're going to offer, I said, will I have to go aftermarket to buy winch? And they said no. The cool thing about this is these accessories are, if you buy high quality ones, they're very expensive. So if you look at a light bar, so a light bar that stretches, almost the width of a truck, you can buy one of those on Amazon from China for like $100, $150. You can also spend around 10 times that, around $1,500 for a US made one with kind of very similar components, but construction is a lot better. Waterproofness is a lot better. It's going to last longer, but the cost to build them is probably, not that much different between a $1,500, US made one and a $150 one from Amazon. And so they said they're going to have a solution for this in-house. So I can see someone buying a light bar, spending $1,500 or so, or $1,000, getting it from Tesla. It will probably be plug and play. I imagine there's going to be power going to the front bumper and the rear bumper, the bed of the truck. So you're not going to have to wire stuff into the vehicle. When you wire an accessory to a car like a winch, you have to wire it to the battery to get power, and then you have to wire a switch to inside the cab. So I imagine these off the shelf will be available, and I wouldn't be surprised if the mobile team can install them. Like when I got my first Model 3 Performance, it didn't have a spoiler, and then a couple months later, the spoiler was available, and the mobile tech just came out to my house and popped it on. I can see a similar thing happening with accessories.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a complete game changer, especially with the way that they build things, right? They're gonna make, hopefully the goal is obviously it's gonna increase margin, like Herbert, you're saying, but they're also hopefully gonna make it somewhat affordable. Obviously, hopefully it's not like the what is the Model S, brakes that cost like 20 grand, but we'll add Matthew back in. But any thoughts on some of that news? It looks like
you know what's wild about that is that hey,
welcome back.
This is a little Kian. He's just waking up.
You know what's wild about that is, as optioned out as you can do a Model 3, it's kind of wild that this is the first foray into making something with accessories, when they could have this could have been a road they could have been down a long time ago. Like, that's one of the things I know that Eli probably thinks about this, but there's not really a lot of mods you can do to the Model S like you can to the Model 3 or Model Y. They have lights and tail lights and everything. It's like, I want cool stuff for my Model S. It's like, no.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think that the Cybertruck is designed in a way that it is just the way luckily it was designed. It can be easily added accessories versus the Model 3, Model Y is just a regular car. Where can you attach things to it?
Yeah, and I think this happened because they would have had to share information with third parties in order for the third parties to start designing those 48-volt architecture accessories. And if
they would have had to give out size measurements and everything ahead of time.
Yeah, and if you remember, 13 years ago, 14 years ago, the first couple generations of the iPhone, when the new vehicle would come out, when the new iPhone would come out, the only accessories you could buy were the Apple ones. So if you wanted a case, you had to spend $50 for an Apple case. And, a few years after that, they would start to work with the accessories companies. So now when the phone comes out, you can buy a case ahead of time, $10 case on Amazon. I wouldn't be surprised if we'll see something similar where in a few years, there will be more cooperation with these third parties. When you think about it, when the Cybertruck first comes out, volume's going to be very low. I'm predicting this year there's going to be, single-digit thousand number of delivered Cybertrucks. I think next year it's going to be low six figures. The year after that, we're probably looking at 3, 4, maybe even 500,000 a year. And by 2026, I think it'll be the best-selling truck in the U.S. So by that time, there's going to be a ton of accessory companies manufacturing different parts for this vehicle. And
there's already a couple in the market, like Cyberlander. They're literally building something on the edge of the bed, but obviously I don't know if they have the full specs yet. Unplugged is obviously, Unplugged is they're actually a Tesla service center down in Hawthorne. They're closely, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have an in there. But there's definitely a lot of companies, kind of like the Rivian experience, because it's interesting that you mentioned that, and so thank you, Herbert, for bringing that up, because for them to be able to even go after the Rivian kind of like more adventure versus like just like alien technology, just going down from your house to Safeway, which is still pretty dope. But for them to go after that adventure community is going to be literally, they're going to be potentially eating Rivian's lunch. So, but yeah. Any additional thoughts? I think there was one thing. Here, let me post this comment. I thought this was relevant for the time. Hey, Matthew, do you mind speaking about any plans on the Cybertruck windshield wiper?
Yeah, so I talked to Franz quite a bit after the presentation, and the wiper came up. Because I was asking him the same question I asked the Cybertruck team, like, how close is this production beta to the final release? And they both the Cybertruck team and Franz said, if production started today, this would be it. Like, this is as close to done as we've ever been. And I asked about the wiper. I said, Elon's made comments about not being thrilled about the wiper. And Franz directly said, like, we've had a bunch of iterations of the wiper, and this is the one that he's like, I'm really happy with this one. So, you could, the wiper, goes straight up, vertically on the windshield. You could have a horizontal wiper that, at the bottom of the windshield that would be more attractive or partially hidden, but that's going to affect drag. And so it has to go vertical to lower the drag. And drag is going to be, so important for this vehicle because of the size and the weight. So I wouldn't be shocked if the wiper changes in a year, 2, 3 years from now. But I think when the first release comes out, it will be this version. I also wouldn't be shocked if there's a hydrophobic coating on the windshield, like there is on the cameras, on the camera lenses or the camera housing, so that you don't really need the wiper as much. Up here in Seattle, myself and Herbert, we're going to use the wiper a lot, but maybe in Southern California, people might just remove the wiper, during certain times of the year.
Well, I think also for the aerodynamic qualities, there's no way. What other way could you put it? It has to be like vertical how it is. You know what I mean? Like, and having 2 windshield wipers wouldn't look right. It just seems like engineering wise, this is like the only way you could really do it. You know what I mean? Without having to overcomplicate, like Elon was saying, like having it rest underneath the windshield or underneath the front trunk lid, like then you end up ruining like the aesthetic of what you were trying to do with the Cybertruck in the first place.
Yeah, I think we can be confident in knowing that the Cybertruck team has tested a lot of different options. This is not it's not like they just threw it on there. They went through a bunch of different iterations, and I think drag was probably their number one concern. And so this is the model they're the version they're going to production with.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. I like it. I don't really. It's not going to deter me from buying a Cybertruck.
So we're one question I had actually for Eli, because Eli's big into camping and big into there's actually like a Tesla camping day that they've been running worldwide. It's been big in Europe, but I wanted to just get your thoughts on how Tesla camping is going to change, or really camping in general, and then we'll kick it back to Herbert to get us into the news. But just want to see how Tesla camping is going to change.
So this is a make or break feature for me, whether I buy the Cybertruck or not, and that's whether or not we're going to get the circulating air to the bed. And I don't know if you got a chance to ask them there, Matthew, or not, but some of the recent design changes to me makes it look like that may not be folding down and that we may not get air to the back. So that will make all the difference, whether this is a vehicle for Tesla camping. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be an off-roader that people will take out into the wilderness to camp. But whether or not it's a Tesla camping vehicle is really going to depend on how they pipe airflow to the back. Which if they do, I'll be buying one. If they don't, I'll be borrowing a friend's every once in a while.
Yeah. So, I think a year and a half or so ago, Elon responded to a question about potential folding midgate or midgate that would open up. It was clear when we saw the vehicle that there's a fully enclosed bed and there was no like lines of where the midgate could open. The team did say it will not open. There won't be an opening midgate. The glass is a single piece of glass, which will you can fully put it all the way down. So you could have a tent on top or just sleep under the vault cover and the glass would be open. You could have the HVAC. But if you have an opening midgate, that's going to affect the rigidity of the vehicle. It also adds to the potential for vibration, road noise, rattles, which is like the biggest complaint about Teslas, at least the biggest complaint I have. And then the other thing is Elon said a couple times this is going to be a watertight vehicle. We'll see how true that is. But if you look at the pictures of the tailgate has weather stripping. So when it's shut, it is watertight. So I didn't see the sub trunk, but I imagine in the sub trunk there's going to be drain holes. So you can open and close just like on a boat. You can open and close the drain. I imagine we'll see that in the vehicle. The thing about opening midgate, that was one of the complaints I heard from a lot of people in my Twitter thread, but it's not a big deal for, again, 99.9% of buyers. We talked about GM offering the 4-wheel steering. they used to have, their Cadillac EXT truck, and there's like a Silverado version that had an opening mid-gate, and it was only sold for a few years. If you guys remember the Matrix 2 movie, they had a bunch of those in that movie. It was only sold for a few years, very low volume. People didn't actually buy it. So it would be cool for some people to have it. But if you're under 6 foot, you can still pretty comfortably sleep in the bed. If you're over 6 foot, you can fold down the tailgate. Maybe there'll be a tent that will, instead of being 6 foot long covering the bed, it will be 8 foot long and go to the end of the tailgate. And you should still be able to camp in it with having the window open for your HVAC.
Yeah, that'll help circulate the air. I mean, that'll be awesome.
Definitely. All right, so we'll kick it to Herbert just to get us into the news. But I wanted to really just spend some time on the Cybertruck this morning. So, Matthew, thanks for going in deep. I think even there's actually a guy named Matt. Funny enough, he was just saying thank you for the detailed response on the windshield wiper. So, but yeah, kick it off, Herbert.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Yeah. So let's see the news that happened ever since just Monday this week, or at least the weekend. The first big news was, of course, Giga Berlin announced that they can now do 5,000 cars per week. This is something, we've been waiting for a while to see that Giga Berlin and soon Giga Texas is actually ramping up their production. And you know how Tesla works is it takes a little bit longer to get it going because they really want to make sure it works well, but then it speeds up. And so I think I've seen the kind of forecast that we should expect Giga Berlin maybe at 10,000 cars per week by September. So very soon. But I think we're all very happy because, when we're waiting for the Q1 results coming out this weekend. By Sunday, we're going to hear them tell us the production delivery. And the key question for everybody is the margins, because of the major price cuts they did in January. But one of the reasons, the storylines, the narrative of why the margins could possibly not be as bad as it could be because of the price cuts is because Giga Berlin, Giga Texas are ramping up, the 4680s are ramping up, and so this is a good sign that they're finally there. I think, John, you also wanted to talk about the news from Cox. Correct, Cox Automotive, and then how they kind of shared the gain. So maybe I'll just skip that. But basically, Tesla is, gained tremendous market share as compared to that, right? The other big news was Tuesday? What is it? Or Monday. They announced that Tesla in China is, as of year to date, March 2023, from January to 2023 to March, it is the number one selling vehicle of all vehicles in China. And Model 3 came in 10th. This is comparing not only like electric vehicles and not only hybrids, but all vehicles, including fuel cars. So, and it's big and it's by a lot. So the number one selling car in China in 2020 so far since 2023 is Model Y at 83,700 units.
Wow.
The next one is also an electric vehicle, a Hongquan Mini, 66,000. So the price point will be very different, of course. Then the Song Plus, which is a hybrid, 62,000. And it's really cool. I mean, like the fourth selling is a fuel car, the Levita, and then you get a couple more electric vehicles. And so clearly the electric vehicles is taking over, and you can see that in the top 20 cars that they're selling. So I think that's big news. And the other one, I mean, we're just hearing all these pieces of news about market share and growth for Tesla, and we kind of like shrug our shoulders, but it adds up. It adds up. Another one is, Tesla finally hit a milestone in Norway, 50% market share of all electric vehicles in Norway. And so it's, it's a small country. They're kind of a leader. People go that, there must be a different market. But it asks the question of whether or not you guys believe that can Tesla break through the 20% market share. There was this Gary Black has been having significant conversations on Twitter, and he thinks it's ridiculous to think that by 2030 you should kind of forecast that Tesla will be over 20% market share, when in fact, it's already 50% in Norway. So is that a sign? Maybe not. Maybe it's just a kind of like an early point. The other thing is in again back in China, the January and February year-over-year sales in China. So I mentioned how Tesla gained 10% in January, 32% growth in February, BYD 40% growth, but all the other car manufacturers, Japanese, Korean, German, and American, they all fell significantly. And then, yeah, there's another stat here that in China, they are, what is it? Yeah, in 15 countries in Europe, looking at the top 8 brands, and what you'll see is Tesla continues over the years maintaining the 20% market share, but all the other car manufacturers are getting smaller and smaller slices. And so they're being split up while Tesla continues to grow that. We heard 3 car manufacturers announce or reveal or their plans for new cars. So we have the Kia EV9, we have the Mercedes, which is just a concept car, the Maybach, a very high luxury car, and then we have the Polestar that's coming out this year. That would be interesting to see what that is. But they're all electric vehicles, and they're being announced at this point. And then, yeah, we're talking about Q1, estimates. So I think that, let's see. Yeah. Okay. And then almost done here.
What maybe stepping back, what are your thoughts on, like, what are people, or even if you've been, obviously I know you talked with Alexandra, like, what are people, analysts, are they are they thinking that this is going to blow, like the records are going to be broken with the Q1 deliveries? Are people underhyped? What's the pulse on the market right now from your
No, fantastic. So, it is great news, I think, for us, because we're hearing the analysts, the consensus, the Wall Street consensus is at 420. And we've heard, like the guidance for Tesla is 420. But everyone else who are following it closely, and when you look at their numbers, they are at 440, 450, and up and higher. So we have Emmett Peppers at 440. We have Brian from My Tesla Weekend at 444, and Alexandra herself thinks it's 437. I'm at 430, but anything above 430 is, I think, something that's going to be significant enough to kind of, make people kind of like sit up and be aware that this is significant. And then the question that everybody's concerned about is the gap between production and delivery, which I can't stand. I can't stand that they're sales thinking that there's a demand issue after 3 months of proof that there is no demand issue. But it's just this weird, like, oh, I don't believe it, that there's cars on the boats and they haven't been. But, if they can show that the gap is not as big between inventory, production and delivery, then I think we're fine. But I'm glad that the analysts are 420. Troy Teslak is originally at 420 as well, and then he apparently has raised it, but it's in a Patreon, so we don't know exactly his number, but he always does that. He always raises at the end. So I'm glad that they're very low, because I think most of us are actually expecting it to be higher. Yeah, I'm curious what the folks here think.
I think it's going to be a little bit higher. I'm interested to see what it is. I like the information about Norway, because before it was like, oh, it's a saturated market. It's so small. They're never going to be able to grow. And in that market, and then look what's happened. It's like Tesla keeps doing these things that they say is impossible to do. Like, oh, they're never going to sell 500,000 vehicles in 2020. And now here we are talking about a quarter where they're going to sell over 400,000, and it's just like, it's staggering. It's pretty amazing to see. So yeah, I think they're going to be above the number. It's going to be interesting to see like how the market takes it. I've never really cared about what the market thinks, but because it just seems like they've just been so far behind like retail investors, and so it's just kind of funny to me that people still look for that approval from the street.
Yeah, it's always nice to have a pulse on what they're saying, because at the end of the day, and shout out to Tesla stock today. I think it's up like 3 to 4%. So maybe it's running a little high, just given potentially some of the announcements that are going to probably happen, I think, on Sunday. But yeah, I think this quarter is going to be, in my opinion, pretty strong. Actually, I can just show it real quick. I don't want to. This is actually kind of breaking news. So in that it looks like the Fed is going to be making stricter guidelines on the actual tax credit. So if you look here, I think it's here, US unveils stricter EV tax credit rules taking effect on April 18th. So I don't know exactly what that will mean, but it looks like the Model 3 will still have the tax benefit until April 18th, but that could put a little bit more, again, pushing more of the numbers up until April 18th. But no, all that to say, if you look at Q1, the Model 3 has never been more affordable. The people were comparing it to the Corolla as far as like the actual like lease payment. It was actually in parity. And then if you talk about total cost of ownership, it's going to be a lot cheaper to own a Model 3. But the Model Y, again, is the unicorn here that, and actually gave me chills when Matthew was saying that the Cybertruck by maybe even 2026 could be the best selling truck, which is insane to think. But here we are 2 or 3 years later after the Model Y. I think it's maybe 3 years later, and it's just destroying the market. It's just taking up because it's the best bang for your buck, good quality, probably the best EV in that segment anyways. And so, I'm personally really excited and bullish about this quarter. I think it'll definitely be north of 420, maybe 430, 435, if not higher. But I think this is going to be the quarter that not was a layup, but given the fact that they dropped the prices, the Fed eventually, dropped their, made the requirements for the EV tax credit a little bit more favorable for Tesla. I know that was a big thing, especially in January when they released it. Everyone was just throwing stones over at the IRS, not metaphorically speaking, but it was just one of those things where I think this is going to be an amazing quarter. And I think for them, they had the margin to drop it. And, I know these guys, they do the analysis as far as like, if we drop it, they have a model. I know, their people in finance are running those numbers. If they drop the price by a certain amount, how can they continue to maintain a healthy margin? So, and as Herbert was saying, with Giga Berlin ramping, Shanghai, and even Austin continuing to ramp, I think, it should set up for a really strong quarter.
And the key to winning in the stock market is being able to under promise and over deliver. So analysts having a 420 price target or 420 delivery target, that's exactly what we want, especially after Q4. And what Gary Black is saying is he's not incorrect. At Q4, they didn't sell as many as Tesla said they would. The street ultimately adjusted expectations to be very close to their real number. And then ultimately to move all those vehicles in transit, they ended up doing so at a large price cut. So if they have that number again, there's a huge gap between deliveries and in transit. The street's going to be worried that is it going to take another price cut to remove the remaining inventory. So if the street says 420 and we end up at 435 and the number in transit is half of what it was last quarter, that tells a very positive story. Now, granted, Tesla's obviously a long-term company, and the majority of investors, at least a lot of us here in retail, are long-term investors. So we're much more interested in a long-term share price rather than the quarter-to-quarter. But guys like Gary Black are analysts. He has shareholders who are emotional and will want to pull their money out based on how Tesla does on the quarter. So people just kind of need to remember that when they see the reviews and expectations from these guys, that like they don't exist just for the long-term investor. They exist for everybody looking at the market at a single window in time.
I had interviewed both Matthew and Amy yesterday at my show, and Amy said something that was kind of interesting about the earnings call. Both the production numbers and the earnings call, which is that what you want to listen to in the earnings call is the guidance, and that the margin is going to be the lowest that the margin will be this quarter, and that every quarter from now on it's going to be higher than that. And so, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because this is like the year that they did the price cuts, but also that they're just getting all these things ramped up. Now, one of the things you were talking, John, about, Cybertruck being number one, Model Y is number one. I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but I felt like they made a mistake with the Model 3 because the Model Y overtook it, like big time. And so what they can do is refresh the Model 3, lower its price point, so that it's further of a differentiator between Model Y, and then Model 3 becomes its kind of number one, its category too, right? You know what I mean? Like it just feels like Model Y they kind of kept it a little too close. What do What do you guys think? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. You know, when the Model Y was announced, they said the pricing would be about $4,000 or $5,000 more than the Model 3, similar to the Model X being around $5,000 more than the Model S. But for U.S. buyers and global buyers, an SUV is a lot more offers a lot more utility. So if you're comparing a all-wheel drive or performance Model 3 to a Model Y for next year, whatever it is, $5,000, it's a lot more vehicle. It's just a better buy for most people, unless you just want the sportiness of the Model 3. Like the Model 3 is the most fun car to drive. Because of that, Tesla discontinued the standard range Model Y to help with the Model 3 sales. But yeah, I agree. Until there's a refresh of the Model 3 or lower price point, or even just education of the low price point, we'll still see the Model 3 sales lag behind. I posted that thread last week about the Toyota Prius being more expensive than a Model 3 in every major market. And when this was so surprising to me. I found this out from a friend who had just bought a Model 3. And they said it was 10 grand cheaper than a Prius. And that was like shocking to me. I had a comment yesterday about the safety video Tesla published saying, this is how Tesla should advertise. Elon liked that comment. So at least maybe he's thinking a little bit about advertising. But if Tesla just said, hey, this is how much you can buy a Tesla for versus the competition, I think that would surprise a lot of people. Last night I was having dinner with the couple that I'm friends with, and they were looking at a BMW iX, and they were asking me about my Model X and my wife's Model Y. And they were really surprised to learn that the Model X, the BMW, when you see it advertised, its MSRP is like 85 grand. But once you add, like, if you go to any dealership with zero markup, you're talking 95 grand for the non-performance version, and the performance version is like 120. And the Tesla beats it in every single category. And so I showed them my car, and what they said to me is the only thing they liked better about the BMW, they thought the BMW had nicer leather seats and a nice leather steering wheel. But everything else, range, performance, acceleration, third row seat, storage, operating system, every other metric, the Model X is going to outcompete it. And so I think Tesla needs to advertise just a little bit, with this safety video that came out yesterday. And there's quite a few of us, we were chatting on Twitter about, this is great. This is what Tesla needs to do. But the only people who see that video are those of us in the little Tesla universe. That's not going on TV. It's not getting served up via ads. The vast majority of vehicle buyers are not auto enthusiasts. They're just people who need to drive to work and drive to school. And that's the audience we need to target.
Yeah, I think just to add some potential intel on some of the stuff you're talking about. So I agree 150%. Tesla doesn't even necessarily need to do marketing. They need to do educating and putting that out. I think some of the intel would be Tesla's very conscious of what they put out and how they put it out, because it's partially just how the market will respond. Partially, right? If they're putting out something about how affordable their cars are, again, the media may take it a certain way. So I think that's the one thing I've heard in the past with Tesla, and even Elon's mentioned certain things about it, is how conscious they are. But I 150% agree with you. They need to be educating, creating like short videos on, hey, this is the Model 3 has never been more affordable. You have until March 31st, or I guess April 18th, to go out and get one. This is how it compares against the 4 or 5 other. And that's not just to, people again are probably going to say it's a demand issue and why they're putting out this information. But with their base, they need to be continuing to inform, because as we all know, as Matthew was saying, right, sometimes we live in this small little Tesla universe. But the reality is that we're also the biggest fans. We're the ones telling our moms, our friends, our sisters, our brothers. I can't tell you how many people over 4 or 5 years who I originally told about Tesla all own one now. They literally all own one. My 2 sisters have one. My old boss bought one. Like, everyone has one now. And it's because, I was, preaching the Tesla word back 4 or 5 years ago. But now it's important to continue to do that. I think There was even some more options with even the standard range Model 3 and how low that price got. Right. So that's the one thing. It's the double-edged sword. Maybe potentially Tesla's a little bit too much in their head about that, and they just need to stop caring. But I know that that's probably been the biggest thing that's actually held them back from putting out basic information, because most of the emails that you get from them are like, you know, kind of like not even product announcements per se. It's like more like product features, like, hey, your solar walls do this now. And so I think that's going to be a potential, because at some point they don't necessarily need to advertise, but they need to be in the process of educating people. And if they don't turn that on, and they have, right? I mean, there's a reason why Twitter is going off the cliff. Like they're just tweeting all the time now, because they realize, well, obviously because Elon owns it, but you know, whatever has kind of the light bulb has clicked on. I mean, I can only imagine that has only helped with sales and educating and informing people. But I think as they step into this next phase, going from like that little, you know, pre-teenager to a teenager to an early adult, you know, as far as their company life cycle goes, that will be a huge transition, because it won't just be all the fans. Because at some point, this Model 3, Model Y, I'm driving down the street and I see like 4 or 5 now. It's like people don't care to go, oh, did you see my Tesla? It's just like, it's the Toyota Corolla. It's the Toyota Prius. And so they don't care. They're not fanatics like we are, or kind of like in this, you know, Tesla universe, as Matthew was saying. So I don't know, Eli, if you had some thoughts.
My prediction is within 2 years, Tesla will be running advertisements in traditional TV and other media formats. And like Elon has said, he's been saying for 5, 6, 7, 8 years now, Tesla will eventually have to advertise. It's not going to be the misleading type of advertisements like Legacy Auto does, but even just simply saying what model, running a beautiful video of a Model 3 and telling people the price would shock a lot of people. I still meet people today in 2023 that think Teslas are $100,000 cars only.
Right.
The $100,000 Tesla is like 5% of their sales now. And yet people still think that. And why is that? And John made the exact point. The average Model 3 and Model Y owner buying a car now is not a Tesla fan. They're just buying the car because it is the car to buy. And that's fantastic. Yes. But they're not the evangelists like everybody here is. And a lot of us here are in Model S, Model X anyway. So like, it's, you know what I mean? So like that 3 and Y, that average consumer that should be buying a Model 3 instead of another $35,000 or $45,000 car, they are being marketed to by all the other car brands. And Tesla doesn't have to put in a lot of effort to sway them their direction. Beauty of the car, safety, price, autopilot. You will get a ton of people. So my prediction is within the next 2 years, those advertisements are absolutely coming. If you look at the quality of the content they're putting out on some of their YouTube videos and stuff now, those are future going to be sponsored ads.
Right. I think Matthew had a great tweet the other day about a friend that was looking at the prices of comparable vehicles, right, Matthew? And you figured out like, well, hell, it's just cheaper to get a Tesla. And that's even before you start factoring everything else that comes with the ICE vehicles.
Yeah. I mean, it was even surprising to me. You know, I pay so much attention to this, and I didn't believe it was true. So if I don't know that the Model 3 is cheaper than a Prius, how's the general public who just assumes Tesla equals expensive? And if you look at a Tesla compared to comparable, you know, BMW, Lexus, in every category, it's far cheaper just as a drive away price, like not including, you know, cost of maintenance, you know, the better resale value. It's just cheaper to straight up buy it. So we need to get that.
Can I ask you guys a question? Yeah, sorry, Matthew. So the great conversation, and Eli, thank you for bringing that up, because it's absolutely true, right? So the perception and brand of Tesla is a premium brand. It's like an Apple iPhone, correct?
Yep.
But they're focused on mass production. They're focused on cost reduction. You saw the entire 4 hours of Investor Day. It's about how they're going to reduce costs. Do you guys agree and believe that Tesla should actually lower the price? Could you still maintain a premium brand and yet cheaper than everything else? I think they should. Imagine if Apple iPhone, now, you know, there's ways to do it, right? You can have different segments and so forth. Apple kind of like always releases their older phones and makes that cheaper, but their brand new phones are always $1,000 or something like that. But what if Tesla sells the best premium car, the best technology, the best looking, best everything in it, And yet it's like, just so much cheaper than the average car out there. What would happen?
I tell
What do
you
you guys think if that's
what's
a
funny
mistake?
about that. What I
Yeah.
think is funny about that is that Tesla's never called themselves a premium, or, you know, I mean, they don't categorize themselves as that. They are literally trying to just sell the most vehicles as
Right.
that they can as electric vehicles. And even though they're dropping prices, they're still not even at their original prices that they announced they were going to be in the first place. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even though they're dropping prices, they're still not at that base price of the initial. So I think, yeah, they can definitely start lowering prices.
John, I took your clip of your interview with Elon, and I actually just showed it and talked about it recently, where he said, right, you had this clip that you just recently tweeted out again, where he said that, there's only a certain amount of price that you can keep raising it because people can't afford it anymore.
Right.
Yep. And then you can keep making it the greatest, more features, but at the end of the day, why do that? You got to cut the price. And so that's why, yeah.
Yeah, I do think, I mean, there's going to be, I'm not going to say the come to Jesus moment, but there's going to be that moment where obviously they are going to continue to go down market as far as they're offering this next gen platform. I do think that they're going to come out with a cheaper car, especially to just really be competitive in China. And maybe they keep that car just in China. But again, their goal is to accelerate. I mean, Elon has very much said this. The fundamental good of Tesla is how fast this company accelerated us to a sustainable future. That's literally what they're focused on. So I do think that there is kind of there is a world where they, being this premium brand, will have a lower tier, but hopefully it's the best lower tier. And I know they'll do that. They're not going to compromise safety, their technology, or even really their brand just to put out a $25,000 car like some of these other companies will just try to just get something off the lot. So, but yeah, I would agree with that clip that Elon said. At some point, you're pricing people out. Like you're seeing that happening with Rivian and Lucid right now. They're 10 years too late. People can't afford these $160,000 cars anymore, especially in this recession that we're in. And I hope we call it a recession. I don't know. I live in the Bay Area, and it's we're being annihilated right now as far as like tech is just being hit really bad. And all of these companies are just laying people off. And so these other companies like Rivian and Lucid, they're priced a lot of people out. Maybe not the Ford Raptor, type market, but that market is again fairly small. So you can only penetrate that market. So until they are able to hit mass production and then continue to drop prices, they will forever be struggling, if not really just kind of being a really small niche market. So. But yeah, I don't know. Was there any closing thoughts? I know we're reaching the hour. I don't know if there's any closing thoughts or little tidbits. I know we didn't get to everything I wanted to, but at the same time, duty calls. I don't want to spend. I know we could go all day probably. But okay, well, with that said, I think Joe had to jump off. So shout out to Joe for coming as well. He's at SJV Tesla. Thank you, Matthew, for bringing all of your wisdom, especially your experience going to Investor Day and really sitting down with the team and getting those insights is unlike it's unmatched. So thank you for coming and joining the show as well. So give him a follow as well at Matthew DR. And then of course, Herbert Ong, always making us brighter. He runs an amazing show on YouTube, and really Monday through Friday, I think it's at noon. You have a bunch of amazing people that just come on your show. So thank you for just kind of dropping in. He's at Herbert Ong, and then obviously good buddy, longtime friend, Eli Burton. He started My Tesla Adventure. He was actually the club that I was trying to model my club out after as much as possible. And so we spent a lot of time together talking about the early days. But he also started The Adventures of Starman. It's an amazing comic book, and the Starman NFT, so Web 3.0. So he's at Eli Burden _ on Twitter. So give everyone a follow and check in next week, Friday at 8 a.m. We're going to be doing this Tesla Beat every Friday. So appreciate y'all joining as special guests and potentially regular attenders as well.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so
Love
much.
the name. Tesla.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, shout out to Joe for that. He came up with that one. So, and then Kelvin, again, the logo, he came up with the logo. It's a Tesla, or like kind of a car with like a little pulse, kind of like a podcast.
Nice.
So,
Brilliant.
yeah, we'll be ramping that up, but it's really cool either way. Thanks for joining.
Good.